What is up, YouTube? So my channel recently hit 10k subscribers and it came at quite a surprise. I wasn't expecting so many subs so quickly, and I want to thank you guys, and I do kind of owe you guys a bit of a sort of milestone video, and quite a few of you guys have been asking me for a bit of a home studio tour to get a bit of an insight as to like the sort of gear I'm using, what sound card, what MIDI controller I've chosen, and just the sort of environment that I'm working in. So this is that video. Let's dive in and have a look. Studio furniture is pretty expensive here in South Africa because there's no companies really catering to this sort of market. And when you're importing big desks and racks, the imports and duties and all sorts of stuff like that can really stack up. So a lot of the stuff in my studio, like the desk and stuff, I've either upcycled from an old computer desk, and then the kind of behind rack desk area where my screens and all sorts of stuff is on, I built that one myself, so it's a little bit wonky, so keep that in mind. My studio probably doesn't look as good as some of the other studios out there, but this is what works for me, so let's have a look. So on that side of the desk, I've got my MIDI controllers, I've got the Novation Remote, and I've got a Novation Launchpad Pro. I used to have my MIDI controller right in the center of my desk, and I found it was a little bit of a waste of space compared to the fact that I don't play with two hands. I can only play sort of a couple of like riffs and stuff with one hand, which is obviously my right hand because I'm right-handed. So I decided to move the MIDI controller over to the right-hand side where I can still reach it ergonomically from my chair, and that made more space for my EURORACK, which I'm building in the center of the desk over there. I've got my synths on that side as well as my EURORACK over there, so that's like my sort of jamming synth corner. So I can either go into that corner and play a little standalone kind of session, or I can record bits into the computer. It's all kind of hooked up. I've got a little wall box that I've built on the wall there that I can just quickly plug a synth in and I'm ready to go. So this is my main MIDI controller, the Novation Remote 37SL Limited Edition. So I know it's a bit outdated and there are more current versions out there, but this one still works perfectly for me. This series of controllers, and a lot of Novation stuff in particular, is designed to be very intuitive when, specifically if you're coming at it from a bunch of different angles. You can either create your own templates live on the actual unit itself, you can create templates via the software package, or you can use sort of various like Ableton, Cubase kind of like ready-made APIs that automatically just assign stuff, and it's just a very kind of intuitive and user-friendly controller that works both very well in DAW situations as well as kind of standalone synth situations. And like I said, you can create templates on the actual unit itself, so you don't actually need a computer for it to function 100%. But also just adding the computer adds the sort of auto map and all sorts of other cool functionality that Novation kind of built for the remote series stuff. So this is a super awesome controller. On a side note, I've actually got another one of these Novation remote controllers. This might seem a little bit excessive, but there is method in my madness. So my idea is to be able to, for example, set up a project or set up MIDI mapping that works with a controller and not have to unplug that controller and lug it out of your studio, and just be able to plug in essentially the same controller and have the same mappings and everything set up exactly the same, but on a different controller. So you don't run the risk of damaging your studio controller while you're out at a gig or something like that. But also you don't have to worry about unplugging it and damaging the USB port and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's cool having a backup because if something does happen to it, you don't have to relearn a new MIDI controller. But at the same time, you know, having a spare one for a gig that uses exactly the same mappings and templates and all sorts of stuff like that is very helpful. So that's why I've got one. This is one of my all-time favorite studio possessions, the Roland SH-101. Something about the simplicity and just the raw tone of this synth just always speaks to me. I'm not sure if it's because most of my favorite artists have used a lot of this synth in their works, or just the fact that pretty much every time I touch it, I'm able to come up with some really nice sounds that are usable, even just considering the fact that it's probably one of the most simple synths in terms of sound design. Some cool things that this has built in is a really cool sequencer which allows you to record notes in, play them back, and then transpose them to all sorts of different keys. That kind of really works well with the way that I create music. If you've been following me for a while, you know I do a lot of that transposing because I don't know all my scales. So for myself, this is something that it's become quite a sort of intrinsic part of not only my workflow, but sort of my streamed performances and stuff like that. I don't actually want to ever take it out of my house because I'm just so scared that something might happen to it and I might be stuck without it. So I'm actually looking at getting myself the Behringer MS-101, which is a recreation of the Roland SH-101, obviously for a much more affordable price with some additions of some slightly more modern features and stuff like that. So I'm definitely looking at getting myself one of those, and I might even do an A/B comparison video. If you guys are keen to check that out, then definitely let me know in the comments. It's got random LFOs built in, almost like Serum's kind of chaos oscillator. The filter sounds absolutely incredible when the resonance is high. I could go on for days about this guy. This is another absolutely incredible synth, considering how basic it actually is. As you can see, it's only got 4 main parameters, but the cool thing about those is those kind of act like macros as well. So you can save a patch with certain sort of configurations of what these macros are doing on which sections, and those settings stay throughout in the preset. So from a playability point of view, it's very intuitive, and specifically for live play, you're able to quickly choose a sound and, you know, start tweaking immediately without having to, you know, go through all of the parameters and just make sure everything's kind of initialized, and you don't have to kind of get a bearing as to what's happening in the sound design of the patch when you change to a new one. You can instantly see, got the LED readouts and stuff like that. This is a weird one because I've always wanted to upgrade it for something like a sub 37 or even just a sub Phatty. But the way that this plays and the simplicity of it, there's I just can't get myself to get rid of it or to sell it. Even though I know I want the better version, something about the simplicity and just the sound of it has just kind of kept it in my studio all along. This is my current EURORACK setup, and I know I've been promising you guys a video of an explanation of all the modules and what I've currently got in my rack, but to be honest with you, I'm actually planning on changing a few things very soon. So I'm going to do an updated video when things are changed up a little bit, when I've got some new stuff to show you guys. So definitely stay tuned for that one. If you want to pause the video, you can check out like what's here. I might just add it in the descriptions of all the modules I have, but don't pay too close attention as things are probably going to change very soon. There's going to be some awesome stuff that I'm planning on putting in here. I'm super excited. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. Then I've got the Novation Launchpad Pro. So you're probably thinking, why does somebody who doesn't use Ableton have something that is pretty much designed for Ableton? And that's the reason why I actually went with the Pro version as opposed to just the regular Launchpad. This functions completely as a standalone unit. So as you can see here, this is the Chromatic Mode. All of these pink dots represent the note C, and all of the non-illuminated pads represent sharp notes. So you can play keys in a scale, etc. But another cool thing that this has built in is scales mode, where you can enable that and then it only displays keys that are in the scales. The reason why this controller is so awesome, in my opinion, is it's got actual hardware MIDI out. So that means it can function entirely standalone with something like a EURORACK synthesizer. It can function with other hardware synthesizers, and even something like Tractor, you can create your own custom mappings with it. I'm not going to go into that, but if you guys are keen to hear more about like Tractor and custom mappings and stuff like that, also let me know in the comments and I can maybe do a video on that. Another cool thing that this has built in is what they call faders mode. So this allows you to create like a MIDI mixer sort of situation. And one of the cool, really intuitive ways that this functions is the harder you hit the pad, the quicker it will automate to get to that point. So if you slam the pad, it'll be an instant volume up. But if you hit it really softly, it'll be a gradual volume up. So this is incredibly cool, specifically with like EURORACK synthesizers for creating swells, but being able to get your hands free, you know, doing something like that, and then that automates a swell while you can then do something else in the patch. This is my currently empty EURORACK Skiff. I'm planning on putting a few essentials that I would use for like sound design and production and stuff in here, and then I'll have another sort of system on my left-hand side, which I can patch into this if I need extras, but this will be kind of like my day-to-day workhorse synthesizer right here in the front. I might actually have to add in another row, but we'll see when it gets to that point in time. What are these two peculiar objects on the left-hand side of my desk, you might be asking? If you haven't seen one of these before, this is a really cool controller built for Cubase. How it works is you hover your mouse over any of the parameters. It works with VST3s as well. And this AI knob over here becomes a real-time control for that parameter that your mouse is hovering over. So I basically keep this in my left hand when I'm doing mix downs and edits and stuff like that. It kind of creates this extension of your hands inside the DAW. It's a very cool intuitive process that this creates. It even allows you to lock parameters in case you're scared like the mouse might move away from hovering over it and stuff like that. And there's various kind of hotkeys that you can assign and all sorts of stuff like that. It works as a jog wheel, master volume controller, all sorts of stuff like that. So this is a really, really cool item and chills right here for whenever I need it. This is actually a little box that I created for my videos and live streams. It allows me to switch between scenes and switch audio tracks and stuff like that. So this is based on Arduino, and it's a very, very easy thing to build. If you guys are keen, I'll post a link in the description. I'm not sure if you guys can get a very good view of that, but this is the main sound card that I use. It's the Focusrite Saffire Pro 24. So this is cool because it's Firewire, and that allows me to get a lot of channels in very low latency into my computer. And it's expandable with ADAT, so you can expand it to up to 24 channels of I/O, and that's plenty for most small home studios. I mean, I could record a band with it if I didn't need to. Obviously, if you are going to go with that and you do want more inputs, you are going to have to add a preamp or something like that. So let's have a closer look at my rack. At the top here, I've got a super cheap patch bay, but at the end of the day, it's completely passive components, so it's not actually affecting the audio in any way, so any patch bay will do. Obviously, just the lifespan of the connectors on the more expensive ones will last longer, but at the end of the day, if you treat your equipment well, I don't see any issues. Then I've created like a little blank panel where I've written what's happening on the patch bay, just to make life a little bit easier for myself. And then I've got my ADAT preamp. This is the A.R.T. Tube Opto 8. It's an 8-channel tube preamp, so it allows me to gain up inputs and add a bit of analog saturation using obviously the built-in tubes that are inside there. So this is cool because now I have the choice of clean preamps in my Focusrite or these tube preamps which give a sort of different sound. These are nice to add onto sort of old analog synthesizers to really, really sort of gritty the sound, especially if they don't have built-in drive or distortion and stuff like that. It works wonders on this SH-101. Then I've got an Access Virus Classic rack. This is a bit of a strange one. It's not in the greatest condition at all, but I picked it up for a really good deal. So I enjoy, specifically if I'm doing like a live jam or just sort of playing with sounds, it's a nice preset machine. Punch MIDI into it and you're good to go. Most of the knobs are pretty finicky, so it's pretty tough to actually get in there and do some sound design stuff on it. But like I said, it's nice as a little preset box. There's actually some internal effects in it, so I can route some of my other synths and stuff through those effects because I don't have any like outboard effects units and stuff like that yet. So this is a little homemade MIDI patch bay kind of thing that I made. That obviously just gives me a quick access to the back panel of my sound card and the back panel of the Access Virus rack. So I can quickly plug in gear if I need to, and I don't have to climb behind my desk to do so. And then I've got this cheap and cheerful power rack. This just allows me to be able to turn multiple things on from the same place, like both speakers at the same time. I can turn my speakers on after my preamps and stuff like that, so there's no clicking and popping. And it's also got a circuit breaker in it for surges and stuff like that. So it is cheap, so it might not be the best, but it works for me. So that's that. So this is my secondary sound card. This is the sound card that I use for gigs. It's cool because it's got split stereo outputs, so I can run 2 channels to my mixer and trigger stuff both in my computer and then be able to mix it kind of on the fly on the actual DJ mixer that's there. I find it's a lot more of a real-time experience using the actual hardware mixer than doing your final mix in the DAW or in Tractor or something like that, because there's always a little bit of latency. But yeah, that being said, I like to send split stereos out. If you guys do want more of an explanation on my performances and live sets and stuff like that, also let me know in the comments and I'll do a video on that. But currently this is being used to record the desktop output out of my Saffire Pro 24, and that allows me to capture like my audio from Cubase and all sorts of stuff like that. The reason I'm going this route is when I first started using OBS, I couldn't figure out the whole ASIO driver thing. And also because now this allows me to send like my SonarWorks signal directly to my speakers and an unaffected signal to you guys, so you don't have to worry about my acoustic calibration. These are my monitors. I went for the Emes Quartz. So they might not be as well known as some of the other brands on the market, but in terms of value for money, when I tried out a bunch of speakers, when I was looking for a new set of monitors for myself, I tried out a bunch of speakers in this price range, and these were by far the best to my ears, to my slightly smaller room. They just worked out the best in my opinion, and they're a little bit lacking on the low end, However, I do plan on getting a sub in the future, and Sonarworks makes up very nicely for where these are slightly lacking. So that's it for like my main stuff that I use all the time. This stuff is all just random stuff like camera batteries, spare cables, batteries for my mouse, camera pack, filters, all sorts of stuff like that. A little bit of a DIY project kind of thing I'm working on. If it ever works, I will do a video on that. This guy, Roland MC303. I don't use it all the time because you can do a lot better inside a computer, but this is really cool for standalone jams and stuff like that, so I do whip it out from time to time and just play around with it. So that's why that's still here. I've got this pretty filthy Roland FC200 foot controller. This is really cool because it allows you to trigger MIDI stuff, clips, or any sort of MIDI automation and stuff like that hands-free. So it's cool for synth jams, looping synths and all sorts of stuff like that. So I do occasionally use this, but more for when I'm just playing around with like more ambient sort of stuff. I don't use it for my live sets or anything like that. It's a little bit excessive. It's cool if you're playing more like hands-on synth stuff, but for me, I trigger ARPs and, you know, pre-made like chunks and stuff like that. So for the sort of like everyday dance music type stuff, it's pretty useless, but it's still a nice toy to have, specifically if you want to like play more instrumentation stuff. It's got this expression pedal which you can link up to like a filter or something like that. So yeah, you can pretty much do anything with it. It's really cool. I have stuck the sticker along the top to remind me of what my assignments were in MIDI and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm sure that doesn't make too much difference to your guys' lives. In case you guys are wondering, my acoustic treatment is a bit of a sort of mix match of a bunch of different companies. I think this is like a Vicoustic starter pack, and I've got another local company pasted up over here. So it's a bit of a mix match that I've kind of been building up over the years, either buying secondhand or, you know, buying new packs that were kind of on special and stuff like that. But yeah, like I think I've mentioned a few times in this video that Sonarworks does enough of a good job in fixing up the sort of slight intricacies of my acoustic treatment that I've never really felt the need to invest all that much into like full-on treatment and stuff like that. I don't really do all that much like vocal recordings and stuff like that, so I don't need to shut myself off from the outside world. I just kind of need to concentrate on what it sounds like in the room, if that makes sense. So you guys are probably wondering what headphones I use for mixing and stuff like that, and I actually prefer not to mix on headphones. In fact, I absolutely hate it. I don't know if it's just the shape of my ears or something, but I find when I use a pair of headphones for like more than 20-30 minutes, it really starts to hurt. So I've got a couple of pairs of headphones that I use for like referencing and stuff like that. I've got a pair of Shure's, these are like my DJ headphones. I've got a pair of Sennheisers, and I've got a pair of AKGs. But these are more just like for referencing. So I think a lot of these I use like while, you know, performing live or doing live streams and stuff like that. So I kind of just so used to the sound of these. That being said, is now that I've kind of discovered the Sonarworks platform, I have kind of been looking at maybe getting myself a really high-end pair of mixing headphones. It's one of those things where I know that my ears shape, like I said, doesn't fit with a lot of headphone designs. So it's one of those things that I'll probably have to go out and buy something kind of with a really big cup or something like that. And yeah, so I'm gonna try out a couple of options. If you guys had the same issue in terms of like not being able to listen to headphones for a long period of time and you found a perfect pair, let me know in the comments as well. So the chair I use in my studio is, surprise, surprise, not a Herman Miller, because they are incredibly expensive to import into South Africa. This is actually a local South African company that my physio recommended when I first went to them with back issues after, you know, obviously sitting in studio for long periods of time on a really, really low quality chair. And honestly, it's probably one of the best investments that I have made in my studio. It wasn't cheap, but at the same time, how much usage does your chair get compared to something like your Midi controller, which you might just use for a sound design or production session, but not necessarily those long mixing sessions and stuff like that. Yeah, a chair is definitely something you want to invest in if you do a lot of studio work. Awesome, that's pretty much it. It's been real. I hope you guys enjoyed my little journey through my creative space. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If there's any gear that I've got that you guys have as well, let's share some stories about those pieces of gear and what they mean to you. And if you guys use them and stuff like that. If you guys want more gear stories, there's a couple of pieces of gear that I've sold in the past that I kind of regret, and some other gear that I've sold that I haven't really regretted, and all sorts of stuff like that. So if you guys want more of this type of video, also let me know in the comments. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for the 10K, even though it's a little bit delayed now. See you guys next time.
Thank you.